Hi, you're listening to Fashion Unzipped. I'm your host, Charlie Gowans-Eglinton, Senior Fashion Editor at The Telegraph. Our episode today is a new instalment in our Day in the Life series. The way that we shop has changed a lot over the last few years. As the conversation around fashion's sustainability problem heats up and a new buy less, buy better mentality emerges, you may have noticed a new trend in shopping, which isn't shopping at all, actually, it's renting. My guest today is Victoria Prew, co-founder and CEO of Hurr Collective, the UK's first peer-to-peer rental platform, which Forbes called the Airbnb of fashion. Thanks for joining me, Victoria.
Thanks for having me, really excited.
Let's begin at the end and explain to our listeners what Hurr is and how it works.
So we are essentially trying to build the Airbnb of fashion. So rather than us buying clothes and renting them to the consumer, we're instead a tech company, and we basically provide, a bit like Airbnb, the platform that allows women to come on and rent and lend their wardrobes. So we are essentially a two-sided marketplace where women on the one hand can monetize all of the things in our wardrobes. I'm sure we're all guilty of having those pieces that don't get enough love. And on the other hand, can rent amazing designer pieces that they can wear a couple of times and send back. So we're really championing sustainable fashion, and it's been a busy 2 years ever since we co-founded the company.
Where did the idea come from in the first place?
So my background's actually quite corporate. I trained as a chartered surveyor, but before that, when I was an undergraduate, I had run a tech company that ended up doing quite well. And so that entrepreneurial seed had been planted pretty early on. And the moment I could leave to co-found Hurr, I did. And my co-founder and I just kind of witnessed this massive rise and disruption of the sharing economy. I mean, Airbnb and Uber, and it's just changing the way that we live. We're called Generation Rent for a reason. People are accessing, people are prizing access over ownership and just don't have that same kind of mentality of needing to own things anymore. So we looked very closely at the sharing economy space and then moved on to the fashion industry and just came to the conclusion that there must be a better way to do fashion. It's obviously one of the world's most polluting industries, and we live in a generation where people want to wear things a couple of times, and then what do you do with them? The more we started looking into it, we thought, okay, here's an industry that we can try and disrupt.
And where did you meet your co-founder, and what's his role in all of this?
So my co-founder and I are actually family friends. He is South African. They then emigrated over to Australia before they came to London. And I somehow managed to persuade him to leave his PhD at Oxford. He was studying maths and scientific computing, and said, okay, you know a lot about maths. Why don't you come and help me set this up? And we spent a year basically building Hurr from line one of code. He built the back end, and I taught myself basically how to build the front end of a website. And it took us nearly a year to build the tech. In terms of the platform, it is as functional as Airbnb, and that comes at quite a complexity and definitely took a long time, but we finally got there.
And what was that? Was that just the two of you in a room together? What did that look like, that year of building?
Yeah, it was pretty lonely, to be honest. It was in a basement where we kind of go between coffee shops. We used to work in the Google campus up in Shoreditch, which provide free office space for tech companies. So we were between there and then our favourite coffee shops, really. We couldn't justify spending money on offices. We were self-funding the company. And we built it, just the two of us, really. That was the only thing we focused on for a whole year, was the product and the process. It took a while.
And then you launched this spring.
Yes, so in February this year, we launched to the public. So we spent the last year and a half testing the idea in what they call beta. So the idea is you trial your product on family and friends and get as much feedback as you possibly can, which meant that when we launched to the public in March this year, our product was seamless, so to speak. Still got a few, teething issues as any startup does, but it was at a stage where we could really start scaling and getting people on board. So we launched to the public in February, March this year.
I mean, I imagine it's very varied, but do you have an average day? What does that look like?
I try to get up early and I'm in the office by 8 o'clock. Everyone else gets in for 8:30 and I'm very nice. I buy everyone their morning coffee.
Do you?
And we sit there and for 15 minutes have a latte and really recap on everything that we want to do that day or what's going on in the market, etc. And lunch breaks don't really exist. Someone normally has to bring me back something just so that I can eat it at my desk. But kind of come 5:45, 6 o'clock, I want everyone out the door. I think it's really important that your team, and for my own sanity, you actually have a bit of an evening. I really try and do, at least like a bit of walking or a HIIT class or a yoga class, and just try and have a bit of an hour. And then I'm normally kind of fed, ready to start back again about probably 7:38, and then I normally work kind of 8 until 10:30, which is my most productive 2 hours of my day, where I can really kind of focus. And I do that probably Monday to Wednesday, and then Thursday night I might treat myself to a dinner or do something a bit more exciting. And at the moment, with our pop-up running, it's a slightly 7-day-a-week job, but generally I'm pretty good at having Sundays off. Completely off the grid, phones off.
So just the 6 days?
Yeah,
normally.
Just the 6 days. On Sunday, it's my slight day of rest, and my phone's off, and it's a bit of me time.
So what is it about a peer-to-peer platform, your peer-to-peer platform, that is different and better than the traditional fashion rental sites?
So the B2C model has been done incredibly well. If you look at the likes of Rent the Runway, who are the leading player in the US, they're now valued at $1 billion. So they're a unicorn company that I think they have over 11 million users. It's absolutely massive for a 10-year-old company. So we thought, kind of, how can we be part of this amazing rental revolution, but without building another Rent the Runway? So we looked really closely at the peer-to-peer space. My passion and background was tech, so was Matt, my co-founder. So what we wanted to build was a tech company rather than an operations company, which is essentially, Rent the Runway have the biggest dry cleaning facilities in the whole of the United States. So we wanted to kind of use our expertise and create something that was similar, and built on a similar concept, but with a different value proposition. So what really differentiates us is our technology and the tech that we use. Our site is as functional as Airbnb. It's taken a long time to build, and it's really that IP that differentiates us hugely.
And in terms of someone using it, I mean, you rent your clothes out and you also rent clothes for special occasions. What are the key occasions that someone might rent a dress, or what have you noticed people's kind of renting patterns are?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I think in the UK, we're still in a mindset that you might rent for a wedding or Henley or Ascot or any of these kind of big once-a-year events. And actually, our number one reason for rental is holiday wardrobes. So we found the time that our users or members really turn to fast fashion is when they're in a last-minute panic. They've got a holiday coming up and they go out to the high street to buy some dresses, or they go on ASOS and buy 10 dresses. So we've kind of really worked around that pain point, and for the more organised members of Hurr, you can book your outfits up to 6 months in advance. So we already have a number of users, in fact probably a couple hundred, that have rented their New Year's Eve party outfits, which is pretty impressive. But anyway, going back to holidays, so our holidays is our number one reason for renting. It's a time where people turn to fast fashion, people are in a bit of a panic, but they also want to wear things for a couple of times, couple of weeks, and then not worry about it. So that's been really fascinating. We've geared a lot of our stock to kind of that spring-summer wardrobe. People go on holiday all year round now. We've just had half term, so we've seen a massive tick up then. And for us, incorporating renting into your everyday lifestyle is basically my main mission. I'm a big believer that we can build our wardrobes full of kind of high quality capsule, your cashmere jumpers and your jeans and your t-shirts, and you should be able to rent the rest. A lot of people on our site rent for every day, so they've got a work interview or they just want to feel a bit better on their way to work. So for us, this isn't just a high days and holidays game. This is something that you should be able to incorporate into your everyday lifestyle.
So once you scrolled through and you found something that you want to borrow, what do you do next?
So exactly like you say, we've really tried to make it look like e-commerce. We want to make it aspirational, and something that people really talk about and are excited about, rather than a kind of hidden secret. Our members are really smug that they spent £30 on a dress that cost RRP was £300. So exactly like e-commerce, you scroll through, and then when you found your item, a lot of our users talk before they put transactions through, as if you might do if you were on a kind of rental on a resale platform, Vestiaire, eBay, eBay, etc. And then once our users have spoken to each other, asked any questions, you put through a request. And then the lender, so if you rented my dress, I have 48 hours to say yes or no. A lot of our lenders obviously reply much quicker than that because they've got someone that wants to rent their item. We do a lot of kind of same day and next day, really, really super on demand, particularly in London at the moment. And it's really as easy as that. So you submit a request to rent, you speak, and then there are 3 options in terms of the kind of logistics. So the first is actually meeting up in a public place. The second is postage. The vast majority of our items go through post. It's really important to us that Hurr is not just a London-centric company. We have users in Suffolk, in Newcastle, in Bristol, Brighton, you name it. So using the traditional post system obviously works well. And then the third is a courier service that we use in London, which cycles items kind of across London, which means that we've kind of given every option, and then our users can decide the logistics, what they care about. Is it a courier service that they'll pay more for, or are they actually willing to just go 10, 15 minutes to Waterloo Station and collect a dress? And a high percentage of our users do actually do that.
And then in terms of money, how much are people paying to borrow a piece?
So when you list your item on Hurr, we have an algorithm that tells you roughly how much it should rent at for a weekly rent or a weekly rate. It tends to be in the kind of sphere of 10 to 20%, so roughly 10, 15, 20% RRP for the week. So if you had a £200 dress, generally you'd see it renting at kind of 30, 40, 45 pounds a week, which makes it at a price point that's as attainable as the fast fashion equivalent. So ultimately, pricing is up to the user, but we kind of give them a bit of guidance on that. And it's really as easy as that. The user has control. So if you listed your dress tomorrow, you might decide to lower the cost and build up your reputation on Hurr, or you might decide to put it slightly above. It's completely at your control.
Do you find that people are using rental as a way to try out brands that they maybe couldn't afford otherwise? Or is it more accessible brands that people are renting, but maybe pieces that you don't need in your kind of everyday wardrobe?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I think what we've seen over the last 10 years with Rent the Runway is that brands, Rent the Runway renting brands, it doesn't cannibalise sales at all. What it does is open up this whole new group of people that could never afford that designer item and get a more millennial audience engaged with a brand. So we definitely have started to see that. Statistically, if you rent something, you are more likely to go on to then purchase it when you've had that amazing experience and worn that amazing dress, whatever it is. So I think there's a large part of this is trying new things, trying new brands, but also this is kind of democratizing luxury. This is, I would never spend £500 on a dress, but I can rent it for 50, 60, 70, or I'd never spend £300 or £150 on a dress, but I would spend 20, 30. So I think changing up your wardrobe is part of this, but definitely this is coming across new brands, cool brands, emerging designers, and getting to know them, definitely.
Do you think this is a generational thing? Because you're a millennial yourself, aren't you?
I am, yes. I'd say I was very much the target market for Hurr. So our current user base is largely millennial. So these are users who are pretty savvy. They've used Airbnb before. They use resale sites. Typically, they're in the kind of 25 to 35 range, which makes them millennial. But we find that the lenders, so the people with the items that they're lending out, tend to be slightly older because they've built up wardrobes over the years and have a slightly higher disposable income. And then the renters are slightly younger, kind of 20 to 30. And they're the ones that are trying to access these amazing designer pieces.
How many users do you have now?
We're now into the thousands. We've up until now operated on a waiting list system, and we've built a completely organic waiting list of close to 10,000 users since we launched in March, which has been crazy and quicker in terms of demand than I ever could have hoped for. And now we're at a stage where we're really starting to open up the platform to everyone and anyone, making sure our processes are in place, and really starting to scale kind of across the UK rather than just being just London.
And I guess that's important as well for having size diversity, because the more users you have, I guess, the more variety in terms of having size 18, size 6, anything anyone could be looking for, rather than, I imagine, when you kind of launch in London, perhaps, you just get the average sizes and not very much on either side.
Yeah,
is that the case?
It's an interesting question. I think rental generally kind of across the UK and especially in America and Australia has come under a lot of heat in terms of sizing. But I think that's because the brands on that B2C model, a brand has to justify the cost of buying that piece. Whereas I guess the beauty with our model is that anyone and anything can be listed. Well, the person can't be listed. Any item can be listed on Hurr as long as it hits our criteria. So I actually think we've done quite a good job. Now we get on average about 100 to 200 new arrivals a day at the moment, which means that we're getting really nice kind of spread across sizing, exactly to your point, but also style and item, and making sure that it's not just dresses and that it's statement earrings and handbags and ski jackets, and sizing is something we've been pretty proactive about. We have a number of quite high profile curvy models that lend their stuff through our site. It's really important to me. My background's not fashion, and that this is accessible and that this is for everyone, and that we can cater for the person that wants a vintage piece and the person that wants the most current piece, and all the different sizes of that.
What's the best part of your job?
Good question. It's not all too stressful. Well, there's a lot of stress, but I think the most exciting thing is, 2 years ago, we were sat in a room hoping that one day the world would wake up to sustainable fashion, and we were laughed out of the room, to be honest, with some pretty senior people who said it's a trend. And we said, no, it's a movement, and they said, no, it's a trend. And here we are 2 years later, where fast fashion is on the front page of every newspaper. People are really seriously looking at their carbon footprint of their wardrobe, different alternatives to buying, whether it's resale, rental, upcycling. There's so much exciting disruption in the space, and I'm just glad that we're kind of part, I hope, of the solution rather than contributing to the problem. And there's a lot of doom and gloom, but actually there's some really exciting stuff happening in the sustainable fashion space. I meet great entrepreneurs all day, every day, who are trying to solve amazing problems, whether it's fabrics or by tech or AI. There's so much going on. It definitely gives you a reason, I guess, to get out of bed every morning.
And on the other side of that coin, what's the worst part of your job?
I think it comes with huge responsibility, running a team and being accountable to a brand. We're still learning all day, every day, and I feel very accountable for my team and not putting them under too much stress and pressure, and really celebrating the highs. And I think that when you're in a startup and things change so quickly all the time, it's sometimes difficult to really celebrate the small successes because you're always on to the next big thing. So I'm really trying to focus at the moment, not just looking forward, and actually taking the time to really celebrate a massive win that we've had, a massive collaboration, whatever it is. Because I think you can go at 100 miles an hour, and we really do go at 100 miles an hour. But, if you don't ever stop and really think about things, I think, you run on a high level of adrenaline, which is probably not too good for you.
Do you have a work-life balance at the moment?
No, not at the moment. In the last month, we're with our pop-up launching. It's a 7-day job. But I want to be there every day. I want to meet our consumers.
I saw on Instagram you in overalls painting the pop-up space yourself.
Yep, Saturday night, 10 o'clock. I was the only employee or member of my team in the pop-up painting the floor pink. But it's all part of it. For me, this is what I want to focus on. This is my main goal. And I'm really driven to make it a huge success and to continue on the kind of trajectory that we are. I am pretty good at self-care, so looking after myself. I'm conscious that health is wealth, so I do really try and look after myself. But in terms of balance, I've probably lost a bit of balance, if I'm honest, at the moment. Have you started taking a salary yet? Good question. I actually took my first salary last month. So,
congratulations!
After nearly 2 years, it's been an exciting time. I haven't actually spent it yet because I'm saving up for something great, but I can't decide what.
Okay, what's on the possible list? I guess after 2 years, it's quite a long list.
Well, I think obviously everything I have to buy, if I am going to buy new things, it's got to be to rent on Hurr. And obviously I've got a bit of an inside scoop on the brands that people want to see and what's renting well. So I've got a few wish lists and quite a big Hurr Collective basket that I'm looking to buy. Depop, I also love Depop and eBay. So I'll definitely be treating myself to a few things, maybe once the pop-up's over.
Very savvy. Where would you like Hurr to be in 2 years or 5 years? What's the plan?
So for the next 6 months for us, a real focus is on building our communities outside of London. We've already got users, as I mentioned, kind of across the UK, but I really want to focus on building communities in those kind of key cities outside of London. So that's definitely a focus. We've also had a lot of interest from menswear, so watch this space. And there is just so many verticals that we're now starting to consider. So maternity wear is also a massive, massive market for us. A lot of our users are crying out for us to have a maternity edit. So we're looking at lots of different areas and kind of directions that we can take her, but growing our community, spreading the message, particularly outside London, and then potentially considering international expansion is on the horizon too. But there's a lot going on.
What advice would you give for someone with an idea, someone who's, sitting at home, drawing up their plan for their app or their website or, whatever it is, who wants to start their own business?
I love this question. For me, an idea is only everyone can tell you that you have a great idea. Your parents will tell you have a great idea. Your friends will. Your godmother will tell you have a great idea. But until someone pays money for your idea or your product, you don't have a business. So my top tip to anyone who's considering starting a business is, even if you can get 10 people to put their credit card details in and pay for your product, or go on your website and pay £10 for your gift or whatever it is, that's when you actually have a business. And that was probably the best advice I was given, is that, you've got your family to tell you how great you are. Until you can get people over that transacting line, even though it's not ever going to be glossy, that's really, really key. And it just stands you in a much better way for, if you go and pitch for money, or you're looking for a co-founder, or you're, wondering if you do have a business. The moment that you can get someone transacting on your site, in my eyes, that's when you have a business.
Thanks so much, Victoria. That's all we've got time for. If you're listening to this before the end of November 2019, you can visit the Hurr Collective pop-up in London at, Victoria, what's the address?
It's 141 Ebury Street. We're 5 minutes from either Victoria Station or Sloane Square Station.
And no doubt you will find Victoria there.
7 days a week.
We'll be back with a new episode in a fortnight. But until then, join the conversation by emailing us at unzipped@telegraph.co.uk and find me on Instagram and Twitter @CharlieGowans. You can also sign up for 30 days free access to all of our online content at telegraph.co.uk/fashion unzipped sub. And while you're there, Emily Cronin has actually tried out some fashion rental sites and rented a wardrobe for the front rows of Fashion Week, no less. We'll put the link to that in the bio, along with the link to the Hurr Collective website, Hurr Collective, HURR.com. Thanks for listening.